Hey everyone, today's tutorial is for Alan the Alamosaurus. He can be a pocket-sized dino pal or a large snuggle buddy depending on the kind of yarn you use for today's tutorial. So he can be made, like I said, in sport, DK, or plush weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today I'm going to crochet him with worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to snag the matching greeting card to make an adorable and one-of-a-kind gift that your friends and family will love. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first up is the head, and to make the head we need to begin with this color A, which is this light pink, and we need to form a magic ring. So let's review how to get a magic ring tied and how to make the first few stitches inside. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press it, the yarn, to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand. And I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around. And then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit. And then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb. And then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand. And we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. We're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position. So kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook, so I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring tied, we're ready to go ahead and start in on round 1. And if you check out the left corner of the video here, you'll see the instructions for round 1 and all the rounds of this pattern. We're going to track with us as we go. So for round 1, we need to put 7 SC into MR, and that means we need to put 7 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring we just tied. So remember, we're going to be working in both the ring and over the tail that we used to form the ring. So to make our first single crochet stitch, we're going to take our hook and go through the ring and under the tail, yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop, then yarn over and draw through both to finish our single crochet stitch. I also like to tighten this first stitch on my magic ring by scooting it to the right towards my hook. And once we have our first single crochet stitch, we need to mark it. There's my first single crochet stitch. I'm going to continue adding single crochet stitches until I have 7 total, and we'll make them the same way we just made our first one. Go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both, and we'll continue in this pattern until we have all 7 single crochet stitches made. Alright, so I have all 7 of my single crochet stitches formed. I'm going to take that tail that I used to tie the magic ring and give it a tug, which closes our first round off and sets us up for round 2. So round 2, we need to make 7 INC, which will give us 14 stitches total at the end of the round. INC stands for increase, and it means we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches in the previous round's stitches. So we're doubling the amount. Go ahead and take that stitch marker out because that's our first stitch that we're going to be working in. And we'll take our hook and pass it through both of the little legs of the stitch, and then from here make our single crochet stitch just like we did in the magic ring. We need to mark the stitch that we just made, because we always want to mark the first stitch of the round. And then to finish up this increase, we're going to put a second single crochet stitch in that same stitch. So you can see I have 2 stitches, the first one here being marked, coming out of the same stitch from the previous round. So I'm going to continue increasing. I'm going to go to my next stitch. There's my second increase. I'm just going to keep increasing. Alright, there's my last increase. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to give the magic ring's tail a final tight tug, flip my work over, and then trim this magic ring tail short, but not all the way off, and discard anything that I trimmed. That keeps it out of my way as I continue working around. Alright, we're ready for round 3, where we've got a parentheses pattern. So everything inside of those parentheses we're going to crochet in the order it appears, and then we need to repeat it in that order the amount of times on the outside of the parentheses. So let's start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round. So there's the first part of that parentheses pattern, 1 single crochet stitch. And then in the next stitch, we're going to increase. And that is 1 repetition of those parentheses. We need to do that 6 more times for a total of 7 repetitions. So that's 1 single crochet stitch and then 1 increase. And we're just going to keep repeating that. Alright, that's all of round 3 done for me. I'm ready for round 4, where I have another set of parentheses that I need to repeat. I'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So there are those 2 single crochet stitches, and then I need to increase in the next stitch. And there's 1 repetition of that pattern, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, increase. I'm going to repeat that 6 more times for a total of 7 repetitions. Alright, that's round 4 done. So for rounds 5 through 7, so 5, 6, and 7, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the stitches around. So as we start each row, we need to take our marker out, place the first single crochet stitch of the round, and then put the marker back in place. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished round 7, and we are ready to fasten off the head. Alright, so I have just wrapped up the last round of single crochet, and I am ready to fasten off and weave in my tail for the head here. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out and slip stitch where it just was. So to do that, I'm going to go through the next stitch, yarn over and draw up a loop. And then the loop that I just created, I'm going to pull straight through the only other loop left on my hook to slip stitch. Then we'll cut our working yarn short, 6 inches or so ought to do the trick. And then we're going to pull the tail we just cut through, so pull the loop on our hook until the tail goes through the slip stitch we made. And then tighten that down. And then we need to weave that tail in as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take it and thread it through the eye of my tapestry needle. And then we're going to weave it into some of the fabric here on the head. So I'm going to sew it down into the stitch right underneath it, and then just through some of the stitches on the head itself. And that gets it woven in. Then we can trim it short here on the inside of our work. Discard what you didn't end up weaving in. And that is the head complete. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next step in our pattern is the body, and we're going to begin by tying a slip knot and chaining. So let's review how to get a slip knot formed and how to make our first few chain stitches. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail, and then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. Sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it, and then with my other hand I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me that's my left index finger. And then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we know how to get a slip knot tied and how to chain, we're ready to go ahead and get started here on the body. So we're going to begin by chaining 16 stitches. Once you have all 16 of your stitches chained, we're ready to go ahead and start in on round 1. So round 1, we're going to begin in the second chain from our hook. So we don't ever count the loop on our hook. So counting over 1, 2, we'll take our hook and go through that second chain, and we need to make a single crochet increase. So we'll make our first single crochet stitch, and then we want to mark that stitch as well. And then in that same chain, we need to place a second single crochet stitch to form an increase. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 13 chain stitches. So we'll just go through our next chain, place a single crochet stitch inside, continue working until we've got 13 single crochet stitches. Alright, so there's my 13th single crochet stitch, and that's going to take me to the last chain, which is technically the slip knot that we tied to get started. And in that last slip knot, we're going to place 3 single crochet stitches. So we'll go through, and then in that same space add a second single crochet stitch, and then one more to have 3 total. You can see that sort of helps us swing around, which is good because we're going to be working down the other side of the chain for the rest of this round. I also like to take the tail to the slip knot that we tied and tighten it and weave it in as I go down the other side of the chain here. So working down the other side of the chain, we're going to be placing 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 14 chains on this side. So that's just 1 in each chain on this side of the chain. So we'll start by going through. I'm going to lay the tail of my slip knot over my hook as well, and then place my first single crochet stitch. I'll just keep working down the chain, of course taking my tail with me and weaving it in till I've got 14 single crochet stitches on this side. Alright, so I have just placed my last single crochet stitch down the other side of the chain, and I'm ready to move on to round 2. So we're going to be starting off by taking our stitch marker out. And then in round 2 we're going to begin by putting an increase in the next 2 stitches of the round. So we're going to be increasing in the first stitch of the round. Don't forget to mark the first single crochet stitch of the increase since it's the first stitch of the round. Then we need to make a second increase. So 2 increases back to back here. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 13 stitches of the round. Alright, so there are those 13 single crochet stitches, which takes me to that 3 single crochet stitch that we did to kind of flip around the chain on the other side. So here in this, we need to place, so next up we need to place 3 increases, 1 in each of those 3 single crochet stitches we put in our slip knot on the other side of the chain. So we'll just increase in each of these stitches. Alright, so now I've got those 3 increases back to back. I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 13 single crochet stitches. Alright, there are those 13 single crochet stitches, and in the last stitch of the round we'll place an increase. Alright, that wraps up round 2. We're ready for round 3, so we've got a parentheses pattern to repeat here for round 3. We'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then 1 increase. And then we're going to repeat that pattern a second time. So 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase. Then we need to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 13 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 13 single crochet stitches. Then we've got that same parentheses pattern to repeat, but this time we need to repeat it 3 times. So 1 single crochet stitch, increase. Alright, there are those parentheses repeated. Then we've got to make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 14 single crochet stitches, and then 1 increase to end this round. Alright, so we're ready for round 4, where we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat. We'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. Then an increase. And we'll repeat that a second time, so 2 single crochet stitches, and then an increase. Then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 13 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 13 single crochet stitches. Then we've got that same parentheses pattern to repeat, but we need to do it 3 times. 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches, and then an increase. Alright, there are those parentheses repeated. Then we need to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 15 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 15 single crochet stitches, and then in that last stitch of the round we'll increase. And that takes us to rounds 5 through 11. So we need to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch of the round for all of the rounds between round 5 and 11. So don't forget to move your stitch marker up at the beginning of each round. And I will see you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet of round 11, and we're ready to move on to round 12 together. Alright, so I have just finished the last single crochet stitch in round 11, and we're ready for round 12. Before we begin round 12 though, go ahead and grab a second stitch marker because we're going to be using it to mark the 10th stitch of this round. So we'll go ahead and take our stitch marker out, and then we're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 45 stitches total, but we need to mark that 10th stitch. So I'm going to stop at the 10th single crochet stitch. Alright, so there's that 10th single crochet stitch. I'm going to place my stitch marker in this stitch because we're going to be stretching across and separating the neck and the body at this 10th stitch, and I don't want to have to count. So I'm going to go ahead and continue crocheting in the next few stitches until I have 45 total. So this is my 11th, 12th. Alright, so here's my 45th single crochet stitch. You can see there are a few stitches here unworked in this round. We're going to leave them unworked and instead stretch our hook over and place a single crochet stitch into that 10th stitch that we've marked. So I'm going to take that stitch marker out and then single crochet by sort of stretching my hook around and single crocheting in that 10th stitch. Then I'm going to mark that stitch that I just made, and then continue adding another 35 single crochet stitches around the section that I just made. So this is going to be the neck over here, and this is going to be the body. So we'll continue putting 1 single crochet stitch in the remaining 35 stitches, which will take us to the marker that we just placed in that first stitch. Alright, so I have just finished that 12th round, kind of a bit of a doozy here on that 12th round, but we've got our 2 sections separated off, and we're ready to continue working on the body section with round 13. And we've got a parentheses pattern to repeat here, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of our round. And then to finish that parentheses pattern, we need to make a decrease. So to decrease, we'll take our hook and go through the next single crochet stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop through that stitch. And then going into the stitch right after the one we just went through, Then we'll yarn under and draw up a loop through that stitch as well. And then we're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 of the loops left on our hook, which forms a decrease and also wraps up our parentheses pattern. So we need to repeat that repetition of 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4, and then a decrease 5 more times total until we are all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 13. Round 14, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. Then a decrease. And that's 1 repetition of that parentheses pattern. We need to do that another 5 times for a total of 6, which takes us to the end of our round. Okay, that wraps up round 14. Round 15, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then a decrease. Then we'll repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6. Okay, that's round 15 done for me, and round 16, which is the last round of the body section, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then a decrease, and repeat that another 5 times. Alright, and that wraps up the body section, so we're going to fasten off. We'll take our stitch marker out and slip stitch where our marker just was. So we're going to go through that stitch, yarn over and draw through, and then draw that loop we just created through the only other loop on our hook to slip stitch. And then we need to cut a long tail because we're going to use it to close up this round, but also to sew the gap between the neck and the body together once we've crocheted the neck. So reserve yourself probably 12 inches or so, because we'll need a little extra. So once you've got the tail cut, we can pull that slip stitch through until the tail passes through as well, and then tighten that slip stitch down. At this point, I'm going to add a little stuffing to the inside of the body through the opening for the neck and the opening here at the top of the body. Alright, so now that I have a little bit of stuffing, I'm going to use the tail that we've just finished, fastened off with, and cut, and I'm going to thread it through the eye of my tapestry needle and sew this last round closed. So I'm going to go ahead and take that tail, pass it through the eye of this needle, and then we're going to be sewing through the front loops left behind from these 12 stitches from round 16. So the front loop is the loop closest to the surface of our work. So when we've been crocheting through both loops. You can see I've got them both here on my hook. The front loop is just this loop here. So we sort of have to push our needle or our crochet hook kind of between those 2 legs of the stitch to grab the front loop. So go ahead and do that. Directly to the left of where my tail is, I'm going to sew up through just that front loop, pull that tail all the way through, and then just rotate and sew through each of those front loops. Alright, so I've sewn through all 12 of those front loops. I'm ready to close this round off by pulling that tail, which cinches that round closed. I also am going to secure that cinch by tying a surface knot. So I'm going to take the tail that I've been working with and make a loop over the surface of my work. Then I'm going to sew up through one of the stitches of the fabric of our work and then through that loop. You can see I've snagged a stitch and I'm working up through that loop that I've just tied. And by pulling that tail, the loop we created will wrap itself around our yarn, which forms a knot. Then we need to hold on to this tail because we're going to use it to sew this gap together. I'm going to send it down through the center opening that we just sewed together. and up through one of the stitches of the neck here. I'm just going to send the tail to the inside of the body and also bring it to where I'm going to need it to sew this gap closed once the neck is created. So at this point I can unthread my tapestry needle, and we're just going to leave this tail attached, and we'll cut back to it at a later time. Then I'm going to go ahead and take the stitch marker out of the neck where I kind of just left it when I continued working the body. And we're ready to go ahead and continue on with the neck section. So we have 14 stitches here left over from when we separated the body and the neck. We're going to go through the stitch down here, the first actual stitch of the neck itself. This little tiny one over to the right of my hook is actually a part of the body, so we want to grab the first single crochet stitch left behind. Then from there we need to attach our main color on to this section here. So I'm going to take my main color and I'm going to wrap it around my crochet hook and then pull that through, and then pull the little tail through that loop I've just created to fasten on. Then I'm going to take that little tail and I'm going to tuck it inside of the neck because I want it to stay inside, kind of weave it in before I even get started. And then we can go back through that same stitch, and using our new color that we've just tied on, we'll yarn over and draw it up into a loop. And then we're ready to begin crocheting. So I'm going to make a single crochet stitch here in this next stitch of my round, and then mark that stitch. So there's my first single crochet stitch. I'm going to keep single crocheting. Alright, so here's the last stitch over on this far side of the neck. So I'm going to go ahead and single crochet. It's my 13th stitch. So my 14th stitch is that stitch we fastened on in. So you're going to have to stretch your hook kind of across just like we did when we made the body, and make that 14th single crochet stitch. So that is round 1 of the neck. We're going to keep crocheting around rounds 2 through 20, 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. And don't forget to move your stitch marker up at the beginning of each of those rounds. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished round 20 and I'm ready to crochet round 21, which is the last round of the neck. Alright, so I have just finished round 20 on that multi-round repeat, and we're ready to move on to round 21, which is the last round here of the neck. So we're going to be crocheting in the next 13 stitches. So we're going to be leaving 1 stitch unworked in this row. Alright, so there are those 13 single crochet stitches, and then we're going to fasten off by slip stitching to that 14th stitch of the round. And then we'll cut a long tail because we're going to use this to sew the head to the neck. So go ahead and pull that slip stitch through and tighten. And we can remove our stitch marker. And at this point, let's go ahead and stuff the neck as well. Alright, so I have the neck stuffed. Before I attach the head, I'm going to go ahead and sew this gap between where the body and the neck are. So I'll take that tail that we sent down to that space. And I'm going to go ahead and thread that tail through the eye of my tapestry needle. And then I'm just going to sew the 2 sides together by grabbing one and then the other. And then I'll lay the thread over and sew a second stitch. We're just closing up the space. You can see that closes that gap between the head or the neck and the body. And we can tie a surface knot and weave this tail in for good this time. so next we're going to go ahead and attach the head to the neck. So I'm going to thread that tail we just cut on the neck through my tapestry needle's eye. And then we're going to take any 4 stitches of the head and attach it so that it lines up with 4 of the stitches with the neck and the body sort of facing forward. So we're going to be sewing these 4 stitches together to connect the head and the neck and then be crocheting in both. So we'll take where we slip stitched and we'll sew through one of the stitches of the head and one of the neck. Then we'll move to the next stitch on the head and the next stitch on the neck. Do that a 3rd time through the 3rd stitch and one more. And that attaches those 4 stitches from the neck to the 4 stitches of the head. So we can go ahead and tie a knot and weave this tail. I'm just going to weave it into the neck. And that attaches the head that we've already crocheted to the neck. Alright, so now that I have the neck and the head sewn together, I wanted to point out that it's really easy to accidentally crochet in some of the stitches that you sewed together. So I went ahead and marked these stitches. So here's the first 2 stitches that I sewed together. I've got a stitch marker going through both. So you can see this is 1, 2, 3, and then these 2 stitches on this side that are sewn together. So when we begin working in both the head and the neck, it's really important not to accidentally add any additional stitches here where we joined. So we're ready to go ahead and join on to and continue working around. So I'm going to go ahead and push my hook through on the neck and attach on, which sets us up for round 1 here on the neck, where we've got 34 stitches to work through. So I'll go ahead and make my first. I'm just going to continue adding 1 single crochet stitch. So then you can see here's the last one before I switch over to working onto the head. So you can see this looks really like a stitch I need to work in, but we've sewn this one to this one here. So we need to kind of just jump over and grab the first stitch on the head that we haven't sewn through. So you can see I went ahead and moved over to the head. And I'm just going to continue single crocheting around. Alright, so here's the last one on the head. And again, see these 2 stitches are sewn together. So it looks like we need to single crochet in these, but we need to skip over them to keep our stitch count correct. So I'm going to jump over to that next stitch here on the neck. And then place 1 more single crochet stitch here, the last stitch of the round. Alright, so that wraps up round 1. We're ready for round 2, where we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 2 done. Then I'm ready for round 3, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. Right there, those first 5, then I'm going to decrease. And then I need to repeat that sequence another 3 times for a total of 4 repetitions. Alright, so there were those 4 repetitions, then I need to put 1 single crochet stitch in the remaining 6 stitches of the round. Alright, so that's round 3 done. Round 4, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 4 done. Next up, we're going to insert the eyes at this point, so let's go ahead and take our hook out. And I have my safety eyes here. So a quick note, if this is going to be for a small child or for a pet, you may want to sew the eyes on instead, but if not, we'll go ahead and use some safety eyes here. And they're going to go in between the 2nd and 3rd rounds that we've just crocheted. So we just made the 4th round, so we're going to count down 4, 3, and 2, and place our safety eye in the space between those 2 rounds. And then, since the top of the head is still open, we'll just go across the way and line up where the 2nd safety eye goes. So 4, 3, and 2. I'm going to make it so that it's even across with the other safety eye for the eye placement. And there are the safety eyes attached. So we're good to go ahead and reinsert our hook and start in on round 5, where we'll begin by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then follow that with a decrease. And then repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6. Alright, that's round 5 down. Round 6, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 6 done. Round 7, we're going to put 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches. And then a decrease. Then just like the last couple of rows, repeat that repetition of 2 single crochet decrease all the way around. Alright, that's round 7 done for me. Before I move on to round 8, I'm actually going to add a little stuffing to the head and top of the neck here. Alright, so I've got a little stuffing added. I'll continue to add as I work these last couple of rows. So round 8, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 8, and round 9, which is our last round, I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch. And then a decrease. And then repeat that sequence another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, so there's that last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off. So I'll slip stitch in the stitch my marker was just in. And then cut a medium length tail to sew with. 6 inches should probably do the trick. And then pull that slip stitch till the tail comes through and tighten. Then I'm going to add just a little bit more stuffing to the inside of the head and the top of the neck here. Alright, so there is some stuffing added to the top of the head and the neck, and we are ready to close up this last round. So just like we did on the body, we'll take that tail that we just cut, thread it to the eye of our tapestry needle, and then use that tail to sew through all front loops of these last stitches on the last round we just crocheted. Alright, so I've sewn through all 12 of those front loops, and I'll pull to close that last round, and pull pretty tight to keep it all the way closed. And then I'm going to tie a pretty tight surface knot to keep that round secure. And then I can weave this tail in to the head. And then give a trim. And that wraps up the head, neck, and body of this pattern. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Alright, so next up in our pattern is the tail, and we're going to be using our main color and forming another magic ring. Alright, once you have your magic ring formed, we're ready for round 1, which is to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of that magic ring. Alright, once you have all 6 single crochet stitches in the magic ring, you can pull the tail to tighten, which sets us up for round 2. We're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then increasing in the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that 2 more times for a total of 3 repetitions. So 1 single crochet stitch, increase, and then 1 last time. And that wraps up round 2. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to pull that magic ring tail tight 1 last time. Flip my work over and then give it a trim, not all the way off, just short. Discard anything I didn't end up needing. And that'll keep it out of our way as we continue working around on round 3, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first 2 stitches of our round. And then an increase. And we're going to repeat that another 2 times. So 2 single crochet stitches, increase, okay, that's round 3 done. Rounds 4 through 6, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So don't forget to move your stitch marker up as you start each one of those rounds. And I'll see you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 6. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch of round 6. And I'm ready for round 7, where I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then increase. And then do that another 2 times. Alright, that's round 7. Then rounds 8 through 10, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in each. So again, don't forget to move your stitch marker up. And I'll see you whenever I have finished round 10. Alright, I just finished round 10. For round 11, I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And then increase. And repeat that sequence another 2 times. Alright, that's round 11, so rounds 12 through 14, again, just 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I'll see you back here when I finish round 14. Alright, I just wrapped up round 14 and I'm ready for round 15. I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. And then increase. And then repeat that repetition 5 more times until I'm all the way around this round. Alright, that's the end of round 15. I'm ready for round 16. Where I'm going to put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 16 done for me. Round 17, I'm going to begin by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 6 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to repeat the pattern of one single crochet, one increase 6 times. So one single crochet stitch, increase, Alright, there's all 6 of those repetitions. Then I'm going to put one single crochet stitch in the remaining 6 stitches of the round. And for my last round, I'm going to just put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, there's my last single crochet stitch. I'm ready to fasten off. So I'll slip stitch. And then you need to cut a tail to sew with. 12 inches or so ought to be okay. And then pull that last slip stitch until the tail passes through and tighten down. Alright, so then I'm going to go ahead and stuff the tail. Alright, so now that I have this tail stuffed, I'm ready to go ahead and attach it onto the body. So I'm going to thread the tail from the tail onto my tapestry needle. And take the body and the tail, the section that we made all of the single crochet increase repetitions on, that's the part that's going to kind of go up on the body. So it'll attach with those one single crochet increase kind of facing up to kind of attach it to the body that way. So I'm going to hold it here, and then I'm going to sew through some of the fabric of the body and then up through one of the last single crochet stitches that I made on that last round of the tail. And I'm just going to slowly work my way around, sewing through each of those last stitches and through the body to attach this tail on. Alright, so once you're all the way around the tail, we can go ahead and tie a surface knot and weave the remainder of the tail we used to sew with in. So I'm just going to weave it straight into the tail. Alright, and that is the tail attached to the body, so let's go ahead and move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up we need to make the legs, and I'll show you how to make one, and then you'll need to come back and make the remaining 3 for the pattern. So we're starting with our accent color, which is this darker pink for me. And we need to begin by tying a slip knot and chaining 5 stitches. Alright, so I have all 5 of my stitches chained. So I'm ready for round 1, and I'm going to start in that second chain from my hook and place a single crochet increase. I'm also going to mark that first stitch of the increase because it's the first stitch of my round. Then I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of my chain. Which takes me to my slip knot where I'm going to place 3 single crochet stitches, which is going to help me swing around to the other side of my chain, really similar to how we made the body. Then working down the other side of that chain, I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in those 3 remaining chains. I'm also going to weave the tail for my slip knot in at this time, so I'll lay it over my crochet hook and then make my single crochet stitches as normal. Alright, that takes me all the way around, and I am ready to go ahead and start in on round 2. So round 2, we're working in the back loops only. So we've sewn through the front loops only. To work in the back loop, we're going to take our hook and go in between the 2 sides of the stitch, only grabbing the back loop of our stitch. Then from here, we're going to go ahead and work just a regular single crochet stitch. So we'll yarn under and draw it through the back loop, yarn over and draw through both, and then mark that stitch as it is the first of the round. And we're just going to continue working in those back loops all the way around for round 2. Alright, so I'm on my last stitch and I do need to make it in the back loop, but I'm changing colors. So I'm going to make most of the single crochet stitch. I'll go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop. But since I'm changing colors, I need to finish this stitch in my new color. So I'm going to take my scissors and trim the short tail with this darker pink. And then take my main color, and I'm going to draw it through those last 2 loops left on my crochet hook. And you can see that makes it so that I'm ready to begin in my new color. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this stitch down by pulling the tail of both colors. And then I'm going to be working these 2 tails in the next round. So rounds 3 through 5 are just going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in the front and back loops all the way around. But for round 3, we need to work these tails in for the first few stitches. So let's work these together, and then we can come back together at the end of round 5. So I'm going to go through that stitch I just took my stitch marker out of, and then I'm going to lay those 2 tails from my color change over my hook, and then yarn under and draw up a loop, and make my single crochet stitch in my new color. I like to work my tails in for a few stitches, so I'm going to take them with me for the next 2 stitches. And then from here we can just lay them along with the magic ring tail on the inside of the leg. They'll serve as free stuffing, and by tucking them in, it'll kind of keep them out of our way. Alright, so I'm going to finish up rounds 3, 4, and 5, just 1 single crochet in each stitch. I'll see you back here whenever I have made my last stitch of round 5, and we're ready to work round 6. Alright, I just finished the last single crochet stitch of round 5, and I'm ready for round 6. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 5 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to put 2 increases back to back. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the remaining 3 stitches of the round. Which wraps up round 6 and sets us up for round 7. I'm just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch of the round. Alright, that's round 7 done. Round 8, we've got a repetition pattern to repeat, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then following that with an increase. And we're going to repeat that 2 more times, so 3 single crochet stitches, and then an increase. Alright, that's round 8 done. Round 9, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 9 done. Round 10, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first 3 stitches of the round. Followed by a decrease. And then repeat that pattern another 2 times. Alright, so there's the end of round 10. Before I move on to round 11, which is the last round of the leg, I'm going to go ahead and add some stuffing. Alright, so I have my stuffing added and I'm ready for my last round, which is round 11, where we're going to decrease in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so there's that last round complete. I'm going to go ahead and fasten off by slip stitching, and then I need to leave a long tail to sew the legs on with, so 8 to 12 inches or so ought to do the trick. And then I'll pull that last slip stitch until the tail goes through and tighten it down. So there is one of the legs complete. We need to make 4 total before we can attach them onto the body. Alright, so I have all 4 of the legs crocheted and ready to go ahead and get them attached. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Alan's body here. And the way the legs are going to be positioned is that the first 2 are going to be here on where the neck and the body meet. So one on this side and one on the other side. And then the back 2 are going to be sort of right where the tail and the body meet, sort of like this. So I'll show you how to sew on the first leg, and all of the additional legs are attached the same way, just in their respective positions. So let's go ahead and thread the eye of our tapestry needle with the tail from one of those legs. And then we're going to be sewing through both layers of fabric here on the top of the leg. So as we sew, we're going to be grabbing both of these layers and attaching it to the body. So go ahead and get that leg positioned. And then I'm going to start by sewing through some of the fabric of the body and grabbing some of the fabric of the leg. You can see I'm sewing through both layers of the leg here. Then I'm just going to keep doing that, whip stitching my way across the top of the leg, sewing it on and sewing it closed at the same time. Alright, so when you've sewn all the way across, I'm going to send my yarn into the body to tie the surface knot. So I'll do that. I'll tie my surface knot. And then I'm going to weave the tail into the body itself. And then trim. And that attaches the first leg onto the body. So we need to attach the remaining 3 legs in their positions on the body itself in the same way that we attached this first leg. So I'll see you back here when I have all 4 of these legs attached. Alright, Alright, so I have all 4 of the legs attached to the body, and I'm ready to move on to the next section of my pattern, which is to make the spots. So we're going to be working in the accent color, which for me is this darker pink. And we need to make 6 of these total, so I'll walk you through how to make the first, and then you'll need to make the remaining 5. So we're going to start by tying a magic ring. And then the only round is this first one here. We're going to put 5 single crochet stitches in that magic ring. So those 5 single crochet stitches inside of that magic ring. We'll pull the tail. And then we're going to slip stitch here to the first that we made. And then fasten off. So you can either sew or paste the spots onto the body. I'm going to be pasting mine. So if you're sewing, you're going to want to leave this tail nice and long so that you can use it to sew the spots on. But I'm going to be pasting, so I'm going to take both the magic ring tail and the tail I just used to fasten off, and I'm going to pull through that last loop and then tighten down my stitches. Then to weave these tails in, I'm going to take a blob of hot glue and add it to the back side of the spot. And then I'm going to fold these tails over and paste them to the back side of this spot. Then I can trim them so that they hide behind. And that wraps up one of the spots. So we need to make another 5, and then we can get them attached to the body. All right, so I have all of my spots attached, and we're ready to go ahead and get them attached to the body. So 3 of the spots are going to go together in a cluster on one side of Alan's body. Sort of like this here. And then the other are going to be flipped over on the other side of the body and attached above the back leg, sort of like this. So if we're using the tails from these spots to attach them, you'll want to sew each one on, but I'm pasting, so I'm just going to add a little dab of glue to the back of each spot where I'd like them to go on the body. So let's get each one of those spots attached. Alright, so I have the spots attached, and we've got one last detail to add, which are these stripes here on the tail. So we're going to take some of that accent color, and we're going to go ahead and get it threaded through the eye of our tapestry needle. And we're going to start by sewing at the base of the tail here. So right where the tail meets the body. And I'm going to leave a long tail of that accent color on the outside. And we're going to just wrap around, kind of in between the spaces between stitches. And then we'll sew down and then up to the next space between stitches. And we're just going to wrap the yarn around, going in between the spaces every other round here. To add these stripes to the tail. Alright, so I'm all the way around, and I'm going to sew this tail back over to where I fastened on with this accent color. Then I'm going to take these 2 tails and I'm going to tie them together. Trim them pretty short. And then by using my crochet hook, I'm going to pull this knot to the inside by lifting up my work and then pushing the knot to the inside of the body. And with that detail added, Alan the Alamosaurus is complete.